Have you ever wondered why the world feels so different from the charts and numbers we see in the news? We hear about massive storms and record heat, and then we look at a financial report that shows a smooth line going up or down. There is a strange disconnect between the scary reality of our changing planet and the calm language of money. It feels like two different worlds are talking about the same thing but using different alphabets. When we think about the future, we often want a clear answer. We want to know if it is worth the cost to fix things. But to understand the true cost, we have to look past the simple numbers. We have to look at the messy reality of how our lives and our businesses are actually connected. Imagine a bridge that falls down during a flood. A typical report might tell you how much it costs to rebuild that bridge. It gives you a specific dollar amount for the concrete and the steel. But that number is just the surface. It does not tell you about the factory workers who cannot get to their jobs because the bridge is gone. It does not tell you about the stores that lose money because their supplies are stuck on the other side of the river. This is the surface concept of direct damage versus the hidden reality of total disruption. We often assume that the economy is a solid machine that can handle a bit of shaking. We think that if one part breaks, the rest will keep running. But the hidden assumption here is that our financial systems are separate from the natural world. In reality, they are tied together by invisible threads. Think about your morning cup of coffee. You might notice the price goes up a little bit one week. You might think it is just a small change in the market. But behind that price increase is a chain of events that started with a frost or a drought thousands of miles away. Farmers might have had to break their promises to sell at a certain price because they were desperate for cash. This creates a panic that travels all the way to your local cafe. The financial system is not just a collection of banks. It is a web of relationships and promises. When the climate becomes unstable, those promises start to break. This is a structural pattern that we are seeing more and more often. It is like a game of falling dominoes. A problem in one place causes a problem in another, and soon the whole system is under pressure. We are seeing this with insurance. In some places it is becoming so expensive or so hard to find that people cannot get a mortgage to buy a home. If you cannot insure a house, you cannot own a house. If people cannot own houses, the whole neighborhood changes. This is not a normal cycle of good times and bad times. It is a fundamental shift in how we live. We need to reframe our perspective and stop looking at the past to predict the future. Most of our tools for planning are based on what happened 20 or 50 years ago. But the world is changing in ways that we have never seen before. We need a new kind of imagination. We need to look at the economy as a living system, just like a forest or a coral reef. Scientists use computer models to simulate how different things interact. They can test what happens if a road is removed or if a certain animal disappears from an ecosystem. We need to do the same for our money and our businesses. We need digital versions of our industries where we can test different scenarios. What happens if a major port is closed for a month? What happens if a certain crop fails 3 years in a row? By running these experiments, we can find the weak spots before they break in real life. This is about moving from fear to preparation. It is about clearing away the fog so we can see the landscape clearly. When we can see the risks, we can start to build better solutions. One example is a type of insurance that pays out immediately when a disaster happens. It does not wait for a long inspection or a lot of paperwork. It just provides the cash needed to get people back on their feet. This helps keep the local economy moving and stops the dominoes from falling. We can apply this thinking to our own lives and our own communities. We can ask ourselves how we are connected to the world around us. Are we relying on systems that are more fragile than we realize? Building resilience is not just about big government projects. It is about how we design our businesses and how we support each other during hard times. The cost of acting now is high, but the cost of doing nothing is much higher. We are talking about protecting a huge portion of everything we build and create. Climate change is already happening and it will continue to challenge us for a long time. But the amount of trouble it causes is something we can still influence. If we build better models and better products, we can manage the turbulence. We can spend less time cleaning up messes and more time building a stable future. This is an invitation to be more creative and more curious about how our world works. We need to listen to the surprises and the warnings that our data is giving us. We need to be brave enough to admit that the old ways of thinking are not enough anymore. By connecting the science of the planet with the reality of the economy, we can find a path forward that works for everyone. It is a long journey and there will be many shocks along the way. But if we understand the connections, we can stay standing. We can turn a time of great risk into a time of great innovation and cooperation. The tools we build today will determine the kind of world we live in tomorrow. We have the chance to create a system that is not just strong but also flexible and kind. It starts with recognizing that everything is linked together and that every small action matters. When the next storm comes, will we be looking at a map of the past or a plan for the future?